Jeremiah was 23, and the world seemed wide open to him. He came from a traditional family, carried a well-known last name in town, and enjoyed a comfortable financial life. His looks turned heads, and girls surrounded him with easy smiles. He'd gotten used to the idea that relationships were simple, light dates, short-term promises, and painless goodbyes. That is, until Dorothy crossed his path and flipped that whole script upside down. Dorothy was captain of the school cheer squad, full of energy, strong opinions, and the courage to speak her mind. Their first glance was a good kind of shock. He was used to taking the lead, she was used to challenging it. They went out for a milkshake after practice, and within minutes, they were already debating music, movies, and future plans. There was spark, but also real charm. He felt pushed to be better, and she realized that with him, she could let her guard down without losing her strength. Their relationship started intensely. Texts all day long, little surprise notes, laughter in the hallways, and that kiss that seemed to say, "We're on the same team." But the same flame that warms can also burn. Dorothy's fiery temper clashed with Jeremiah's quiet pride. It took just one misunderstood comment for the mood to sour. Their first breakup happened over something silly, a jealousy incident at a school game. Harsh words were exchanged, followed by days of silence, and each went their separate way, trying to pretend everything was fine. It didn't last long. Jeremiah missed her presence in the places they used to meet. Dorothy kept his notes in a box, and every time she opened it, her heart tightened. They ran into each other by chance outside the gym. Their "hi" carried everything they wanted to say. There was no big speech, just a simple request to start over and a hug that sealed their reunion. It was the first of many comings and goings. They'd break up, get back together, learn something new, and stumble again. And so, through all those breakups and reconciliations, their love shaped itself like hot iron, full of flaws, yet growing stronger each time. Little did Jeremiah and Dorothy know that this turbulent passion was only the beginning of a story that, decades later, would bring them face to face with the greatest test of their lives. You're watching Life Guidance After 60, a channel created especially to offer advice and life stories for those over 60. Since we're a new channel, we need your help. Please hit like and subscribe to follow our upcoming stories. Their friends noticed the pattern. There was genuine affection, companionship, and shared dreams. But there were also disagreements over small things that, over time, built up into walls. Jeremiah liked being around lots of people. Dorothy preferred clear plans, set schedules, and predictability. When they clashed, each would retreat to their own corner. Later came gestures of reconciliation, a short message, her favorite chocolate, or an invitation to talk things through calmly. With time, they decided to take a bigger step. They got married, full of hope that love alone would be enough to smooth out their rough edges. The first few years were like school. Household bills, jobs, responsibilities, big decisions. Their first child arrived, then a second. There were sleepless nights and hectic days, but also beautiful discoveries, sharing chores, smiling over small wins, and celebrating every little milestone the kids reached. Often, Dorothy showed a quiet strength that held the household together. Other times, Jeremiah brought lightness with his humor and practical ideas. Still, old habits kept creeping back. At family birthdays, they'd disagree about guest lists and timing. On special occasions, a poorly worded phrase would create distance. Later came regret and apologies, followed by another attempt to do better. Outsiders saw a couple who clearly loved each other but needed to adjust how they spoke and listened. Inside, both felt worn down by repeating conversations that already felt all too familiar. Certain moments revealed who they truly were. One happened on their youngest son's birthday. An argument over a small party detail nearly ruined the mood. Jeremiah took a breath, watched his son blow out the candles, and gave in. Dorothy understood the gesture and responded with a sincere smile. That night, he left a note on the fridge, "Thanks for riding the wave with me." You're my safe harbor, even when we disagree. She tucked the note into a drawer and reread it whenever anger threatened to take over. Another defining moment came when Jeremiah's father fell ill. Tense days, tough decisions, uncertainty. Dorothy stood firm as his support. She went to doctor's appointments, kept the household running, and shielded the kids from too much worry. In that moment, Jeremiah saw again the brave partner who'd won his heart long ago, and his gratitude deepened. Once the storm passed, they grew closer for a while, reminded that they were strongest when walking side by side. These moments proved their love was still real, but they also made it clear that cracks were quietly growing. What Jeremiah and Dorothy didn't realize was that sooner or later, those small fractures would come at a steep price, one that could risk everything they'd built together. Years went by, leaving behind both good marks and scars. Love remained, now layered with admiration, care, and memories of overcoming hardships. But the rough edges persisted. A careless remark could lead to hours of silence. An unspoken expectation could bring disappointment. They knew that when they truly listened to each other, things flowed better. They also knew that a tired mind turns any small thing into a fight, and that the heart needs kindness most on the hardest days. By middle age, their home was filled with stories hanging in their memories. Their kids were grown, responsibilities had shifted, and dreams had been adjusted. Jeremiah still had that practical nature, always looking for solutions. Dorothy remained intense, with a sharp sense of fairness and a desire to see everything run smoothly. Between them there was tenderness, a desire to get things right, and a weariness that sometimes spoke too loudly. Life had taught them that love means choosing each other every day, and that respect requires constant practice. This was the ground on which their relationship was built: real passion, strong personalities, victories, and stumbles. What began as youthful fire had become a commitment with history. What they lacked was a way to turn that spark into steady light without extinguishing the flame that had first drawn them together. And at this point, any new gesture could open the door to a different chapter within the same love. Jeremiah and Dorothy continued life together after marriage, but the tensions that started in their youth didn't stay in the past. Their personality differences were clear. He wanted to fix everything quickly, she needed to discuss every detail until they reached a conclusion. Their home routine was shaped by these contrasts. There were peaceful days, when they laughed while making dinner or watching their kids play, and there were days when joy vanished in seconds because of a harsh word or a broken expectation. Over time, the pressure grew. Responsibilities piled up, and every decision felt like a test of endurance. The household budget, the kids' schedules, their children's future, everything became fuel for arguments that seemed endless. Still, the flame of love kept them standing. It was contradictory. There was genuine affection and real companionship, yet the shadow of their fights always lingered over their home. What should have been a place of rest often turned into a space of tension. Decades passed, and the pattern remained. Jeremiah was now 67, Dorothy 63. Their children were grown, but the weight of their disagreements felt more obvious than ever. What had once been masked by the busyness of daily life now stood exposed. The home that should have been a refuge had become a place of demands and uncomfortable silences. They still loved each other, but they could no longer enjoy that truth. Emotional exhaustion had taken over, and both found themselves on the verge of a decision they'd never imagined making, going their separate ways. Jeremiah began thinking about it more often. He asked himself whether it was possible to keep living this way. The strain seemed heavier than the good moments, and the idea of separation, once unthinkable, now felt almost logical. Dorothy felt the weight too, though she kept it to herself. She knew love still existed, but she wondered if it was enough. They weren't enemies, yet they no longer seemed like a complete couple. Every serious conversation ended in resentment, and every attempt to reconnect always led back to the same place. The stress started spilling beyond their marriage. Family members noticed the distance between them. Longtime friends remarked that Jeremiah and Dorothy had changed, that they no longer had the spark they once did. Respect seemed to be slipping away bit by bit, and even their grown children sensed the heavy atmosphere. The love story that had survived so many challenges now teetered on the edge of collapse, like a castle with strong foundations slowly crumbling under the wear of time. Everything pointed to an inevitable end. But just when the last glimmer of hope seemed to fade, life arranged an unexpected encounter, one powerful enough to turn the page on a marriage on the brink of falling apart. It was a critical moment. 37 years of shared life were about to come down to one hard choice: give up or keep trying. And just as everything seemed headed for an ending, life prepared a surprise that would change the course of their journey. The beach weekend seemed like just another attempt by Jeremiah to clear his mind. He left early, hoping for a bit of peace, carrying with him the weight of nearly 4 decades of arguments. As he walked along the sand, he suddenly heard someone call his name. It was Gerard, a childhood friend he hadn't seen in many years. Their hug was tight, filled with memories that rushed back all at once. Amid laughter and old stories, Jeremiah found a chance to finally open up. They sat facing the ocean, and after a few minutes of light conversation, Jeremiah shared what he'd been holding inside. He talked about the constant fights, the exhaustion, and the growing thought of separation. He said he felt love fading and didn't know how to keep the marriage going. Gerard listened quietly, letting his friend pour out his heart. And when Jeremiah finished, Gerard replied with something that completely changed the course of that afternoon. Gerard admitted he'd been through the same turmoil. His own marriage had once seemed lost, frequent arguments, rare good moments, and at one point, he and his wife had seriously considered giving up. But before making a final decision, they tried something different. They made a pact: for 1 week, they wouldn't argue. Instead of focusing on each other's flaws, they'd each write down one reason for gratitude and one loving gesture toward the other every day. What sounded like a simple exercise became a turning point. Within just a few days, they began noticing real changes. As he told the story, Gerard emphasized that the secret wasn't in grand gestures, but in small, daily actions that shifted how they saw each other. Over time, that 7-day agreement turned into 30 days, then 60, until it became part of their routine. The results were so powerful that their relationship was reborn. Arguments gave way to meaningful conversations, and the love that had seemed smothered found new breath. Jeremiah listened to every word as if it were a map out of the maze he'd been trapped in. This wasn't just theory, it was the lived experience of someone he respected. And that revelation brought him something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. For the first time in years, he realized there might still be a way to save his marriage with Dorothy, a path that didn't rely on miracles, but on conscious choices made again and again, every single day. The sun was already setting when Jeremiah said goodbye to Gerard. But inside him, a new light was beginning to rise. The reunion didn't feel like a coincidence. It was as if life had placed that old friend right in his path just when he was about to give up. In that moment, Jeremiah made a decision: he would try once more, not out of duty, but because he truly believed something precious could still be saved. Jeremiah returned from the beach with a different kind of certainty. For the first time in a long while, he carried not just the desire to change, but a clear plan. When he walked into the house, he found Dorothy in the living room, tired, her gaze distant. On another day, he might have let the evening pass in silence, but now he gently asked her to sit down. His tone was calm, free of blame. He told her about running into Gerard, shared his friend's story, and then made his invitation: what if we tried the same thing? 1 week without arguments, just writing down, each day, something we're grateful for and one small act of self-love. Dorothy looked at him, surprised. She was used to hearing proposals for change that came wrapped in criticism, but this felt different. Her exhaustion made her agree, almost without believing it would work. On the first day, they wrote simple things. Jeremiah thanked her for making coffee early that morning. Dorothy noted that she admired his patience with their grandchildren. It didn't seem like much, but it opened a space for each of them to notice details that had long been buried under layers of complaints and hurt. Jeremiah realized those notes held more power than he'd imagined. On the second day, he wrote, "I'm grateful you listened to me, even when you're tired." Dorothy, in turn, wrote, "Today I took care of myself without guilt, and it felt good." Small gestures began to take shape. He noted how much he admired her determination in keeping the family together. She wrote that she was learning to appreciate her own accomplishments without diminishing herself. What had seemed like a simple exercise was quietly creating a space for healing. And with every page filled, the distance between them shrank, as if gratitude and self-love were quietly redrawing the map of a marriage that had seemed lost. Days passed, and something unexpected happened. Arguments, once automatic, started giving way to lighter conversations. Whenever a disagreement arose, they remembered their agreement and paused to breathe before reacting. The gratitude practice began shifting their perspective. Dorothy, who used to be so critical, noticed that Jeremiah still had the same humor that had charmed her in their youth. Jeremiah, in turn, rediscovered Dorothy's courage and strength, the very qualities that had held their family together through the toughest times. 1 week turned into 15 days. Then 30. What had begun as a challenge became a habit. Slowly, their children noticed the difference. Visits became more pleasant, the atmosphere at home felt lighter. Close friends saw the change too. The couple who had seemed destined to live in constant tension now radiated calmness and mutual respect. For 30 days, each morning brought a new entry of gratitude and self-love. One day, Jeremiah wrote, "I'm grateful to wake up beside you." The next, Dorothy noted, "Today I chose to treat myself with kindness, and it strengthened me." Some days he recalled small joys from their past, other days she highlighted personal victories she'd never fully appreciated before. Each note was another piece carefully placed back into the puzzle of their marriage. By the end of that cycle, the practice no longer felt like effort, it had simply become part of their daily lives. That's how happiness returned, quietly at first, until it once again filled their home, proof that when the heart learns to give thanks and to love itself, even forgotten respect can find its way back. Then came the twist no one expected. On their 37th wedding anniversary, Jeremiah surprised Dorothy. Instead of a typical gift, he handed her a notebook. Inside were all his notes since the start of their pact, messages of gratitude, cherished memories, reflections on self-love, and even honest acknowledgments of mistakes he'd been making. Dorothy was moved to tears as she read, line by line, the quiet effort her husband had made to rebuild what they'd nearly lost. That gesture felt like a seal, not just a fleeting attempt, but proof that their love still had deep roots. Dorothy cried, hugged Jeremiah tightly, and in that moment, the looming sense of an ending was replaced by a fresh beginning. The marriage that had been on the verge of collapse was reborn before their family's very eyes. The lesson they, and everyone around them, took away was clear: respect and love don't vanish overnight, but they can be rebuilt, day by day, through simple, consistent choices. Jeremiah and Dorothy discovered that even after nearly 4 decades of conflict, it's possible to transform a relationship almost overnight. And it all started with an unexpected encounter and the courage to try again. 15 years have gone by, and now, both in their 80s, they often say they wish they had met Gerard long before reaching 37 years of marriage. Our channel was created to share guidance and meaningful reflections for those living the best chapter of life, after 60. We're just beginning this journey, and we need your support to grow. So please, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and help spread these messages of inspiration.